Welcome to the inner arena. This isn't motivation, this is leadership conditioning. And if you're ready to get your swag on, self awareness, why power, aligned action, and grit, hit the subscribe button below and let's get to work. Today, I'm going to talk about the number 4 enemy that fuels burnout. And that number 4 enemy is interpretations. Interpretation is the story that we navigate in our mind about ourselves. In these high pressure moments when leading self, what's the story that you're telling yourself? What frame reference do you have of yourself in these high pressure moments? Is it negative or is it positive? What is the self talk like? How are you fueling that self talk and the narrative of yourself in these high pressure moments? Are you not good enough? Are you telling yourself that you have to work harder? Are you viewing yourself as unable to get the job done? Whatever that narrative is, the question really becomes, is it positive or is it negative? And this is where the SWAG framework really starts to come in to kind of help support this. The self awareness, why power, aligned action, and grit. So it takes swag to be able to recognize these interpretations when they're present. Because when you feel this draining type energy in certain moments and can identify the story that you're telling yourself in that moment, and that energy is draining, there's a possibility that an interpretation is there. And so, how do we get out of that? Swag. Swag is the framework to help you like really start to feel good and confident about yourself. So let's break that down really quick as it pertains to interpretation. You're a high achiever, and we're going to look at that from that standpoint that you're a high achiever, leader, and you're doing everything that you need to do to get the job done. That's how you show up. That's what you live on. That's what you're born on. That's just what you do. Bravo. Congratulations. But in these key moments, under pressure, things that you need to do, I don't know. Maybe you feel like your energy is cracking a little bit, right? In those moments, that's what is the story that you're telling yourself in that moment? What is that thought process? Okay. And so where the swag framework comes in is one, having an ability to pause, an acknowledgement that you're off key right now is critical. That's the self-awareness of swag. Okay. Being able to recognize that you have an energy leak in that moment. And in that moment of the leadership leak, of the energy leak, excuse me, what's the thought of yourself in that moment? Is it positive or negative? Now, if you can do that, that's self awareness. That's the self awareness piece of it. And there's a training component to remind yourself of generating this self awareness. And that's just the pause, teaching yourself to pause in these moments when you feel the energy starting to leak. And how do you identify when those energy is starting to leak? You identify it through the doubt and the fear, the anxiety that you might be feeling in that moment. That's the indicator that you're starting to leak energy. Self-awareness, that's what that is. The W, the why power. Okay, now that we've talked through the self-awareness portion of this, what's my purpose? Why do we need this understanding our purpose in this moment? That's really important, because if you want to maintain that high level of effectiveness of being a high achiever, it's important to stay connected to your why and your purpose. So you have the awareness that energy is starting to leak. And so what's the purpose to get back on track, right? And why are you doing what you do, being a high achiever? And the narrative of that story, it starts to help you to shift it. Because if you're thinking the story, and this goes back to the interpretation of what this whole number four enemy is. That thought can be a negative vision and interpretation of ourselves. And so understanding our purpose in that moment can help realign and discredit that negative belief that we may be generating in our mind. And that's the Y power. The A is aligned action. So think about it. When we are able to pause and really reflect in that moment as it creates self-awareness and understand our Y power, the action itself is the pause. That's the aligned action to get us back on track. Okay. And whatever that looks like for you, right? But how do you remember to pause? That's a key question there. That's really key. How do we remember to pause in the moment of pressure situations? It's reps. It's the reps. That's why you're here right now, because we're creating the SWAG framework of self-awareness, wide power, aligned action, and grit. The aligned action is what we're doing right now, creating the awareness. It all circulates within itself, right? So that's the action. So when you can consistently pause, reflect, visualize, take a deep breath, right? All of that contributes to regrounding yourself, embracing your why, and generating more awareness. And then finally, the G, grit, grit. Like understanding there's a bigger purpose of your being in this moment. You're a high achiever for a reason. You're a leader for a reason. And although this circumstance may feel like you're draining, you're overworked, and that interpretation of yourself may feel a little negative at a certain point. But the bigger picture of it all is you're not going to accept that. You're not going to accept that about yourself. You're doing the right thing. You're pressing forward because you are a high achiever, and there's a better way to lead self in these high pressure moments. So what is that better way of leading self? That's the grit. And you're consistently reflecting and thinking through these narratives to create a positive version of yourself in your mind, because it's very easy to tell ourselves we're not good enough in certain moments. And that's the interpretation. That's the enemy of what I'm referencing, of us consistently telling ourselves or having the thought of this negative image that we're just not good enough. We got to work harder. We can't slow down. We can't this. I can't that. All of that, all of that fuels this negative interpretation. But what we just worked on, this is just a simple rep, is the S.W.A.G. We talked about your self awareness. How do you realign yourself, right? For when these negative thoughts start to come up about yourself in these high achieving moments under pressure, we regain that self awareness, okay? The Y power, not losing our purpose in that moment and not forgetting like why we do what we do, and reframing that thought to a more positive image and story that we tell of ourselves. And then the aligned action, consistently pausing, reflecting, visualizing the best outcome for us to influence positivity in our mindset. And then finally, grit, never giving up, never giving up, never giving up. And I do here in the inner arena, you being here, I have a swag cheat sheet for you. Just click the link below. You can grab it there. And then at the end of the day, subscribe. Subscribe. Come back and find out about number three. Okay? Find out about the number three enemy that fuels burnout. Thank you for joining me, and I'll catch you on the next round.